Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'll tell you what, I want to start here. I want to make a few comments here at the top regarding a number of things that I brought up in the last episode, which I think is hilarious. It didn't take very long for a lot of this to sort of come back around and prove a number of different points. And of course, a number of things that I'm sure you completely agree with as well. But first, this has to do with the whole jury duty thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the last episode. I think I know exactly what case it is that I was being called for jury duty. And ironically enough, I came across the case just a couple of days after I filled out the form online, basically saying, yeah, I'm not going to participate. I don't want to participate. So I'm going to talk about the case now, assuming, of course, that this is the actual case. And I guess one could say, if one were inclined, that I'm in the media, and as a result, I certainly wouldn't be a good juror because I know a great deal of a number of different things, and it wouldn't fit. But either way, this was a particular murder case that occurred back in 2011 in the county where I live, in a neighboring town. And this is from WCPO.com, which is ABC's Channel 9 Cincinnati news station, and it is titled John Carter Murder Trial. Defense will present evidence of an alibi. And this John Carter is accused, apparently, of killing his fiancée, Caitlin Markham, back in 2011. He wasn't actually arrested until, I believe, this year, if I'm not mistaken. But apparently, after his fiance's disappearance and then finding her body some years passed, and then they basically continued to investigate this entire time and have pointed the fingers at him, and now he's been arrested, of course, and standing trial. What's interesting is that the trial itself starts, I believe, the 24th of June, but they want all of the jurors to report on the 10th of June. So as far as the timeline is concerned, it certainly seems to fit that perspective. But either way, I'm well aware of the case. I have no judgments of the case one way or another necessarily, but that's basically what the case was about. The case is about a guy who was arrested numerous years after the murder of disappearance/murder of his fiancée, and now he's the number one suspect. But even now, the defense is apparently claiming that this individual has an alibi and there's no way he could have done it, and blah, 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 blah. So there you go. Either way, that's most certainly the case. I find the timing and the timelines to line up almost perfectly, so there you go. That pretty much disqualifies me, I think, but there you have it. Okay. There was also this. This is from the Gateway Pundit, my apologies, but it proves my point on libertarians. And again, it didn't take very long. This was titled Libertarian Party nominee Chase Oliver, it says, is a radical leftist, supports Black Lives Matter, drag queen story hour, and big tech censorship. So there you have it. 38-year-old openly gay former Democrat was chosen as the party's nominee on Sunday evening after multiple rounds of voting. And apparently Michael Rechtenwald got the second amount of highest votes, or something along those lines. He finished in second place. Either way, there you have it. Libertarians in a nutshell. There was this then, and I had no idea that this had happened to this person, but it made perfect sense as soon as I started to listen to him and, of course, look at their face. Sharon Osbourne, the wife of Ozzy Osbourne, has apparently been taking Ozempic for quite some time. And this directly ties into my last Substack article, of course, about the false glamorization of weight loss shots. And certainly, Ozempic is just one of a handful that are used by endless people. As it turns out, she suffered from numerous side effects as a result of the Ozempic shots, both her and her daughter. And she's rail thin. She actually looks like a human frog at this point. I think she's 71 years old. She looks way older than she does. I mean, I don't know what 71 is supposed to look like, but in my opinion, she looks older than that. And one of the side effects that she specifically talks about having had over the course of certainly a number of months, if not a couple of years now, is that not only has she lost 45 pounds, I mean, again, she's rail thin, but she can't put on any weight anymore. And she claims that she doesn't know why that's the case. I mean, she understands that clearly it's the drugs that she was taking and specifically the shots that she was taking, of course. But at the exact same time, she doesn't seem to grasp that it ruins your DNA and it completely changes, again, the organ function and your brain function. And like I said earlier in that article, certainly the hypothalamus, as even they lay out in their own articles regarding the drug, and then the pituitary gland and everything else. But she says she eats normally, but she just can't put on any weight, and she would actually like to. She's even had cancer in the past and openly discussed that and said that she's at her cancer weight when she had cancer. Now, I mean, that's not good either, of course. Not to mention Ozempic causes cancer, along with the rest of those weight loss shots, and certainly can. And she lays all of this out again, but at the exact same time, she also has very visibly, and anybody can see it, she has what's referred to as Ozempic face, which again, she's just very gaunt. And it's beyond obvious. She has sunken in cheeks. I know she's had a lot of face work done and body work, I'm sure, but at the exact same time, she just looks like a human frog. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Again, there are numerous individuals on YouTube and endless articles I know, and lots of different people have endless opinions about it and personal experiences as well regarding those weight loss shots. But my God, the side effects, like I said in the article, it's all risk, no reward. And I fully understand that there's probably other articles out there that's saying that there are secondary side effects, so to speak, that end up improving other ailments potentially. Some have said Parkinson's, that it helps with Parkinson's disease. And again, there could be other ailments as well that individuals have, which of course Parkinson's is vaccine induced, as many ailments tend to be. But either way, there are numerous stories out there of people using these shots, and even individuals in the comment section of my Substack article mentioned as much. And there certainly seems to be a correlation between individuals who took the COVID shots and individuals who have taken these weight loss shots, along with numerous other shots. I mean, say, for example, an individual before the COVID shots had some kind of an ailment that would require them to, again, take shots on a regular basis. Basically, by default, certainly their doctors would tell them, hey, look, you need to take the COVID shot, because if you don't, then, it could further inflame whatever condition you specifically have. I mean, you can take my brother in this particular case. I don't know if he still does or not, but he used to take, I think it was Humira or one of those other shots, once a week, basically, for psoriatic arthritis. Well, psoriatic arthritis is vaccine induced. So, I mean, my brother was taking flu shots almost every single year in and year out over the course of at least a decade, and that's what would cause psoriatic arthritis. But then, of course, he got on the Humira shots and started taking those, and then the COVID thing rolled around, and that entire lie. And, of course, as everybody knows who listens to this show, I warned him not to do it for a variety of reasons, and he did it anyway. But I think that's part of it. That's part of the cognitive breakdown, is that if an individual is in the habit of already taking shots on a weekly basis, then taking another shot or taking the COVID shot or even another flu shot or any other kind of shot is not out of the ordinary for them. They just view it as being, well, this is what you do, and why would the FDA lie to us? And this shot helps me, so why wouldn't this shot help me? Again, it's a bit like comparing apples and oranges, but at the exact same time, it's like comparing grapes. They're all on the same vine. That vine is a corrupt vine. It's the FDA, it's the CDC, it's the pharmaceutical industry, and they're all corrupt. And they make profit, as we all know, on illness, and that's their job. Their job is to make people perpetually sick without them knowing it, and then they make more doctor's appointments, and then they end up taking more things than your average person has to take, and before you know it, their DNA and their body makeup is nothing like what it could have been or what it used to be, long before they ever even took shots or even were going to the doctor with any sense of regularity. So, I don't know. I mean, the evidence is everywhere. It's all over the place, and endless people are, again, talking about this more and more frequently, which I find to be interesting, sad, therapeutic, but at the exact same time, it's very, very revealing that these individuals, again, are taking numerous shots and openly talking about on major platforms as to what they're actually doing to them and the risk and harm that is ultimately involved. So there you go. Just wanted to bring that to your attention also. Again, there's lots of footage of endless people on YouTube talking about it, and some people are saying it's a great thing, and then of course endless others are saying the exact opposite. So there you go. I'll tell you what, I'm going to mention this now. I was going to save it a little bit later, but I'm going to bring this up just one more time because, again, it ties into what I said last week with bringing up Catherine Watt's Substack article about the 10 laws that need to be abolished and certainly reversed and revoked that exist in the United States when it comes to medical tyranny. And there are more than 10, I assure you. But just the other day, there have been numerous headlines now of Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus coming out, the head of the WHO, so to speak, certainly the spokesperson. And the headlines all over the place are basically saying that the WHO has lost, that we the people have won, that the global pandemic treaty has been defeated, that they couldn't agree on a draft or they couldn't agree on anything. And it's back to the drawing board for them, and they don't know what they're doing. And, it was all of us talking about it that caused it to fail and 1,000 other things, and we should pat ourselves on the back and congratulations, we won this battle. I'll tell you something about this, and it really, again, it's probably not going to surprise anybody who listens to me, but I'm not buying this for a minute. I'm really not. Again, the simple notion that all of the sudden we're believing our enemy, that when our enemy says something or our enemy claims to be admitting defeat in something, that we should just believe them. It's that right there when something like that happens where you get stabbed right in the heart, or you get stabbed in the back as you're walking away because you're cheering and then you think you have it all figured out, and then before you know it, you don't. I've already shown, as have numerous other individuals, that the laws on the books in the United States already exist. Again, whether they can actually be enforced or not is another matter. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about brainwashing. You're talking about who believes the narrative, regardless of what it is, and then who's willing to give an order to have law enforcement or lawyers or businesses follow said order. And who, again, is being bribed or blackmailed in order to follow said order. We've already lived through the global pandemic treaty and the global agreement on what will happen in a situation like this. It was called 2020. So I can remember 4 years ago. I remember what happened 4 years ago in that giant lie and not believing how many people actually went along with it. People are still going to go along with it, in particular, if their employers say so. Not to mention, and there's a correlation here also, and there's an element, and I don't know what fraction of this element exists, but you know that there are jabbed people who work for these groups, companies, corporations, box stores, etc. And they almost want something like this to happen again because it justifies their position of taking the shots and wearing the mask 4 years ago in the first place. So a return to that would cause those individuals to potentially go from, again, sort of a baseline level 5 all the way to a 10 once again. It would, again, I think, cause them to justify their past participation in what they went along with, and then basically give them a second round to justify what it is that they would be doing in this particular case. So there's that aspect of it also in my head. The other one, of course, is that, again, numerous individuals who are walking around claiming victory here don't understand that this is already on the books for United States law. That there's that again, I wrote a Substack article about it back in February, which, of course, it was passed in January of this year based on what had been written back in November and December of last year, which is that the FDA and Health and Human Services and certainly Department of Homeland Security, have already teamed up to write particular things out of the law, like informed consent, at the trial level of any medical trial that's taking place. Therefore, there doesn't have to be any medical consent when an individual opens up a box of Advil to take one for a headache, which I don't recommend anybody do that either. Pfizer makes Advil, and Advil's a poison. Ibuprofen is a poison. But on top of that, people just don't seem to understand that that's happened. That's been discussed. That literature is out there. The paperwork is out there. Again, anybody can go back and read that Substack article that I wrote about it. It's right there. It's in plain English. If they want to shut things down because they deem something to be so unhealthy, or they deem something to exist, when in fact it probably won't, then they can shut down whatever they want to shut down. Now, of course, what's going to be interesting, as we all know, is who's going to comply at this point. But pandemic treaty or not, it almost does not matter. I wouldn't trust the WHO or anybody in that organization regardless of what they say. If they say they have a pandemic treaty and all these nations have agreed, and it's not some overarching thing that's going to infringe on people's rights and blah, blah, blah. Ladies and gentlemen, we already have laws in our country that infringe on our rights, and we didn't have a say in them. This has been going on for decades. Congress has been voting on these for decades, approving them. They've been written into law for decades. They can shut down the United States of America the same way that they attempted to in 2020. And what you saw, of course, was you saw numerous states abide by it and go along with it completely. You saw others not, but you saw businesses crumble. And you saw individuals be psychologically tortured to the point where they actually didn't leave their own homes, and they didn't go into stores because they didn't want to. And then store owners, again, saying, well, I don't want to open up a store because I don't want sick people in my store, and well, we can't have that, all while watching their own businesses crumble, and then, of course, lose their livelihoods, lose their marriages, lose their families, lose everything that they have. But again, this is on the books in the United States. It is law already. What the WHO claims they're doing or not doing, like I said earlier, is irrelevant. I don't trust them. If they say again, there is no treaty, we haven't agreed on anything, don't trust them. They're the enemy. Again, if they say that they're going to make you dinner tonight and it's going to be free and it's going to be delicious, don't trust them, don't eat it, and don't go. They're the enemy. But I just find this mentality so fascinating in war, which is exactly what we're in, that the enemy will say something and endless individuals who claim to be patriots and freedom-loving individuals will just blindly believe them. Well, that's it. The war's over because the WHO said so, so now we don't have to do anything. I would equate it to this, and you've heard me say this before on the show, in particular around this time of year when school closes. When school closes, when the cats are away, the mice play. It's during these moments in time of the year, in the K-12 and university aspect of things, where their administrators get together and they all start reformulating how they want to start the next school year in the fall at the end of the summer off completely differently. This is where they start moving money around. This is where they start moving positions around. This is where they scheme and they meddle. Why would it be any different with the WHO when the WHO now has come out and said, well, we couldn't agree on this and we couldn't agree on that, but we're gonna continue to work because we think that this is important, so back to the drawing board. And then, unfortunately, the headlines among the so-called conservatives and even alternative media, and even probably the left, are putting out headlines in the United States saying, we defeated the WHO and they couldn't come up with something, so we win and they lose. No. The answer on that's just a hard no. It doesn't work that way. If you're on a literal battlefield and your enemy is coming across the line, again, I'm just using this as a metaphor, and they say, hey, come over here, we promise, we give up, you've beaten us, we give up. And then you walk over, you lean over the trench, And there everybody is pointing a gun right at you. Well, then you're toast. Then it's all over. This blind trust that people have in their enemy, when their enemy happens to do something that is perceived to be a positive thing for the so-called good guys, I find this astounding. I find it astounding. So I have 4 minutes of Tedros talking. I don't know when this audio took place. I think it took place maybe 10 days ago, if I'm not mistaken. But give this audio a listen. It's about 4 minutes long. This is him describing his quote-unquote frustration with not getting a treaty put together and getting enough people on board and blah, blah, blah. It almost doesn't matter. You have, again, globalist politicians who want people dead and blackmailed corporations and the heads of corporations who will go along with their blackmailers' orders at the drop of a hat if they all of a sudden say that there's going to be some pandemic and here it is and this is our new quote-unquote pandemic, so now you have to go along with it. Those people exist everywhere. So don't drop your guard is basically what I'm saying. Definitely don't do that. And I'm not saying this to fearmonger. Somebody might listen to this and say, Sean, this was a victory and you're just trying to keep up panic and you're trying to do this and that. No, I'm not. I don't trust the enemy. That's all. I don't trust the enemy. Just because a date flies by where they set some kind of a deadline for a particular thing, and that particular thing allegedly doesn't exist, so they say. I'm sorry. I'm just not gullible, and I'm not trusting of the enemy. And as I said earlier 1,000 times, it's already on the books in the United States. The 3-letter agencies in the United States can pull a card anytime they want regarding all of this. It just boils down to, again, when is that going to happen and who's going to do it? It's an election year. Why wouldn't they do it this year? Again, it's the beginning of summer. Trying to pull off a pandemic again at this time doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it certainly does around September and October, doesn't it? Because that's quote-unquote flu season. That's when they pull that card. And, of course, that butts right up against the actual election day itself. And would that change things? Potentially. Again, the enemy wants as many excuses as possible to get people to not show up to the polls. And they have a lot of cards in their deck, and it just depends on, again, which one is going to get played, which hand gets forced into playing which card at which time, even by the good guys. The good guys might force the bad guys to play a particular card. Of course, that's what Operation Warp Speed was all about, getting the bad guys to play all of their cards or most of their cards faster than they wanted to. So again, I find this fascinating, but I find the blind trust now all of a sudden in the WHO to be equally as disturbing. So here's the audio of Tedros. Again, it's about 4 minutes long, but give this here a listen in 3, 2, 1.
So that's really very important. We have given it your best. And as I said, the issue now is, okay, we are where we are. We have traveled a lot. We have progressed a lot, but where are the bottlenecks and how can we recalibrate and move? I think that's very important. As you know, when we started, the reason you have decided to have a pandemic agreement was because of the impact of the COVID-19. We say on the record, more than 7 million people died, but actually, that's underreporting. The estimates show that up to 20 million people died. And the whole world was taken hostage. And COVID has affected everybody. Everybody. I don't know if there was anyone who has not been affected by COVID in many ways. Not only losing loved ones, but economic problems, loss of jobs, you name it. So that's why you said, okay, This impact is because the world is unprepared. By the way, still is. And you said we have to do something. So the second message I have is we have to always remind ourselves that because we're human beings, when the pain is really less, we tend to forget and move on. But of course we should move on. But we should also remember the problem that happened and not really rest until the solution comes. So reminding ourselves of all the losses we had and to say never again is very important. So when we look for the challenges we have faced and finding a solutions, I think that reminder will help. Then I see the assembly actually as a platform to re-energize this process, to be honest. And let's use it as a platform to give us more energy, inspire us. So my wish is we will come out of the assembly re-energized, inspired. We will try everything, believing that anything is possible and make this happen. Because the world still needs a pandemic treaty and the world needs to be prepared. Because many of the challenges that caused the serious impact during COVID-19 still exist. Starting from equity, for instance, was the center of this negotiation. So still exist. And we should really prepare the world. So let's continue to try everything. And anything is possible. And as we always say, if there is a will, there is a way. So I'm still positive, to be honest, despite the outcome. That's what I am. That's what I believe. There could be hiccups. The issue is what do we learn from it and move. This is not a failure. Even when I fail, by the way, many times, I try to learn what happened and then move on. Failure doesn't stop us, should not stop us. But this is not failure. You have really done a lot. You have progressed a lot. I don't call it failure.
Yeah, of course. Why would he? Why would he call it failure? This is a guy in an organization who put all their chips in this basket. That COVID is real, that there was a pandemic, that there will be another one. He's openly saying it. None of that's real, of course. There never has been a pandemic. There never was one in the past. There won't be one in the future. It'll be completely manufactured. In fact, the only one that exists now, beyond stupidity as a sort of a meme and a joke, is, of course, you have endless jabbed individuals who are remarkably sick, have endless ailments, and they have no idea why. So the pandemic, if there is one, has to do with the individuals who are jabbed. So that's the real one that exists. But again, he's openly admitting to not quitting. He's openly admitting that they're going to keep moving forward. And of course they are. Because there are endless organizations, NGOs, and 1,000 other people who exist both in the United States, I should say, and in other countries all over the world, who get paid to figure out and write down and scheme and meddle how they're going to trick people the next time. And they use these corporations and media and government agencies and all of them to do just that. And again, I've been over these PowerPoint presentations on the show before. And those documents exist on my website under the Government Documents tab. Anybody can go back there and take a look at those and read them. They're openly talking about how this is their job. It is their job to figure out what worked, what didn't, and how to trick people into falling for the next thing. Now, they don't phrase it that way, but they say things like, we need to convince more people. And we need to incentivize more people and reward more people for doing what is good for the greater good, and so on and so on. People get paid to think about how to trick people to ultimately kill them. That's not going away. I hope one day it goes away. That's again one of those things where we'll have to see it. And we'll have to know that those individuals don't exist anymore and those organizations don't exist anymore. And even if they don't, there's nothing saying they won't go underground like a cicada would, so to speak, and then years later pop itself back up and then take its same form and then do the exact same thing that it's done in the past. Groups do that all the time. Again, I wouldn't expect the WHO to be any different, or any of their smaller, leaves on the branch, so to speak, that would do the exact same thing. But watching them be eliminated is something that we have to see. And this does have to exist. So again, just in summary regarding the WHO, I don't trust them. And I certainly don't trust some cuck-servative headline on some media outlet that says, we defeated them, we won, the WHO pandemic treaty didn't go through, and, victory for us. Sorry, read United States law. Take a look at what these NGOs in our own country are consistently pushing. Add up the number of representatives and senators who still wear a mask, still talk about COVID like it's real, still reference a pandemic as a time period, and aren't talking about the shots. And then I will show you your enemy, because they're right there. Speaking of that, speaking of domestic enemies, came across this clip on Gab. I'm not a fan of this person, have to play this. This will be the last geopolitical thing, sort of discussion that I bring up. But first of all, before I play this representative's clip, a Miss Elise Stefanik, who decided to make a nice little trip over to Israel and give her 2 cents on her unwavering support for them, and how everybody who disagrees with Israel and the United States should be eliminated, and she basically says that. But again, Donald Trump has been talking recently, and he was on Tim Pool's show apparently, and talking to those weirdos, and again, a lot of basic questions. Again, it's an election year. He's making the rounds. I get it. And I also fully understand that it is very Sun Tzu of him, and I'm not carrying water for him. I'm simply saying it's very Sun Tzu of him, art of war, to bring in your enemy closer. And that by doing that, you're ultimately controlling them, hopefully for the business of defeating them. Because after these last, what would it be now, 6+ months, if you haven't figured out that Israel is our enemy, and has always been, and will continue to be, including their administrations and 1,000 other things, then you've lost the plot, and you're not paying attention. So the individuals that are giving their unwavering support for Israel and all things Israel, and doubling down and tripling down on their bets and blackmails and AIPAC funding and all of that, those are the real enemies. I'll give Donald Trump this, and I don't agree with him on this, but from a war standpoint, I can see why he would say it. Although, again, like I said, I don't agree with it. If he's openly saying things like, which apparently he did say, that students who are on college campuses who are protesting Israel, that by default they're anti-American and they should be kicked out of school and they should be kicked out of our country if they are over here on a school-related visa of some kind. First of all, my take on it is this. If anybody breaks the law and you're over here on some kind of a visa, yes, your visa should be stripped and you should be sent back to whatever sandbox you came from. That's my 2 cents. However, if an individual is an American citizen and they're exercising their First Amendment rights, ladies and gentlemen, criticizing Jews or anything that they have anything to do with should never be a crime in the United States. Period. I've been over all the reasons why that's the case, certainly from a historic perspective. But what we also know is that there are endless domestic terrorists who will hold political positions in our country who want that to happen. They want anybody criticizing anybody who's Jewish or anybody who has anything to do with the Khazarian Mafia, the Jewish lobby, etc., etc. They want those individuals to be Bolshevized, I'll use that word, out of whatever position they currently hold, whether it be a job, school, you name it, a town they live in, ostracize them, Bolshevize them, and then we'll use our Bolshevik tactics against them, embarrass them, humiliate them, and then off they go, and they'll learn their lesson the next time. These are the people who have to go. And that can't stand. It cannot stand in the United States. I came across a document, again, it's beyond embarrassing, before I play Elise Stefanik, which, again, she's equally as embarrassing. But the ADL, of course, is a funny, they're a funny lot over there. Clearly some of the dumbest human beings on the face of the planet, but on their website, they have a 60-page PDF. And I may have brought it up on the show before, and if I have, I apologize, but I don't think I have. It's titled, and anybody can download it, it's free. It's titled Hate on Display, and they have that trademarked. And it says, the subtitle is Hate Symbols Database. And it has all of these different symbols, including just straight up letters and percentages. Let me give you just one example. 100%. Now, here's what this means. That when you say 100%, it says 100% is shorthand for 100% white, quote unquote, among white supremacists. It's also common, to create alphanumeric variations to proclaim solidarity with a particular white supremacist group or gang, such as 112% for 100% Aryan Brotherhood, quote unquote. The number 12, the number 13, particular dates. The number 14 is anti-Semitic. I mean, they have the number 18. It goes on and on and on. Hand gestures, symbols, keystrokes on a keyboard. The number 33, the number 38, the number 43. It just goes on. These people are nuts. They're absolutely nuts. And this document is hilarious. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious. Flags and all kinds of signs and a number of different things. They're all anti-Semitic, and they should all be outlawed. Again, that's why the ADL is running point for congressmen and women, because they can back each other's play and then convince people that by simply opening your mouth, by default, you're anti-Semitic in some form or fashion. Before you know it, the entire alphabet is going to be anti-Semitic as far as they're concerned, and anti-Semitism doesn't even exist. It's a made-up word. But here's Elise Stefanik. Here's audio of her. She again flew over to Israel, and she wants to tell you who she loves more. And she'll tell you in 3, 2, 1.
As long as I serve the American people, I will defend George Washington's vision of religious pluralism and freedom. Today, this means crushing anti-Semitism at home and supplying the state of Israel with what it needs, when it needs it, without conditions to achieve total victory in the face of evil. Chants of death to America are not hollow slogans. They are a promise that what happened here on October 7th could happen in the United States unless Hamas and its jihadist accomplices are eliminated. And it is the United States' high honor and high responsibility to support Israel's effort. I have been clear at home, and I will be clear here. There is no excuse for an American president to block aid to Israel, aid that was duly passed by the Congress. There is no excuse to ease sanctions on Iran, paying a $6 billion ransom to the world's leading state sponsor of terror, or to dither and hide while our friends fight for their lives. No excuse, full stop. That's why I'm proud to have sponsored or backed every measure to aid Israel that has come before the United States Congress. Every single one. And it's why for years I have been a leading proponent and partner to President Trump in his historic support for Israeli independence and security, including moving the U.S. Embassy to its rightful place in Jerusalem. Israel is indeed a miracle, an outpost of freedom, of Western values, of civilization, a striking example of human potential, the physical embodiment of Herzl's maxim, if you will it, it is no dream. It's the same founding ethos that we prize in America, the American dream.
That should disgust you. In fact, it should disgust anybody who listens to it. If she has dual citizenship, it should be stripped from her. She's a traitor. Sorry, that's just my opinion. It's disgusting. Comparing us to Israel, what Israel does and what we do. Our governments and the mafias that have been running both of our countries for a very long time, and yes, they're one and the same. They're all criminal and they don't represent the people. They don't represent us here in America. We want nothing to do with what goes on in Israel. It's the gayest country in the world. Pedophilia is borderline legal there. If not straight up legal, it's where all the pedophiles go to hide anyway. But don't worry, it's us that should look up to them, so saith Elise Stefanik. And as you would expect, it's an election year. So she has to get all her shekels in line in order to have yard signs in everybody's yards before they go and vote for her in New York or whatever district she represents in New York. It's beyond disgusting. I disagree with everything she said because almost every single thing that she said is false. It's not even historically accurate. And just because George Washington gave a couple of speeches to a couple of synagogues, because there were only 4 in the United States, I believe, at the time, certainly around 1776, that didn't mean that he supported everything that they did. Again, there are numerous individuals throughout history, and I don't even have the time to go through all of them, who have openly said that this kind of treachery, which is exactly what George Washington was warning people about, that this kind of treachery is exactly what brings down a nation. It's this kind of duality, so to speak, that brings down any kind of a nation. And he also warned people and said, be very careful about pretend patriots, because pretend patriots will destroy your country. That's exactly what Elise Stefanik is. Any of these politicians who are seen over in Israel, in particular nowadays, they're showing you who their real ally is, and it's not us. It's not the hardworking American. She cares more about students on a college campus getting yelled at and what should happen to them as a consequence than she does getting homeless veterans off of the streets of America and giving them a roof over their head, the medical treatment that they need, a potential job in order to help fix our country and get them back on their feet again. She doesn't care about that because she's been told not to. She's been told to go after the youth who criticize Jewish individuals because they can do no wrong. I have a huge problem with that. Everybody should have a huge problem with that because, to use the leftists' terminology, that's not equitable. That's not diverse. That's not inclusive, is it? The satanic snake here is eating its own tail, and I don't think it's a bad thing. They're doing this out in the open for endless people to see. It's just a matter of whether or not people are paying attention to it or not. And I just hope that more people are paying attention. They have to be able to see this. There's absolutely no reason, again, why an American politician needs to go to a foreign country to pledge allegiance to their country the way that they do things and then claim, of course, that they can't do any wrong, that they're justified in all of the moves that they make no matter what. Elise Stefanik is blackmailed, bought, sold, owned, and it makes you wonder what illegality she's engaged in over the years, doesn't it? She faked a hate crime, so to speak, and hate crimes shouldn't even be a thing. But she faked one of those. I brought that up a long time ago. It was the last time it was her election year, and she was up and was wanting the Jewish sympathy vote. So allegedly, her and her husband went to a supermarket, and wouldn't you know it, when she got back into the parking lot, back to her car from the supermarket, she found a note on her windshield that said, "Get out of here, Jew," or something like that. She took a picture of it. It was written in pencil in the snow on the corner of a piece of whatever, regular sheet size legal paper with the lines on it and everything. And she goes, "This kind of anti-Semitism can't stand, and this is absolutely horrible." Isn't that funny again that we never saw any security footage of anybody going up to her car and actually doing that? Because that would be very easy to obtain. hi, can I see your security footage? Can I film it with my phone? Because I think that my car got vandalized, or I think that someone left a hate-filled note on my car, and I want to further my point because I'm a politician and I want to prove that this happened, rather than just show that this note showed up randomly on my windshield right before an election. Give me a break. Only the gullible would actually believe such a thing. But she actually went along with it because she did it. She engaged in it. Again, there's no proof that actually happened, and there's no proof that she wasn't the one who actually did it. So, politicians, ladies and gentlemen, they can't be trusted. Read through the lines, read accurate history, and I'll tell you, we've all been warned, and we've been warned year after year, decade after decade, century after century. Okay. Moving on here. This next one is disturbing. So, I'm warning you, but it's disturbing, and I understand that this is debatable also. In fact, I'm going to read a bit of the debate that unfortunately goes along with this, but this has to do with Ethan Crumbley. And Sandy Adams and Jesse James tossed this my way the other day. So I want to get out in front of this and say this. I have no proof that this happened other than the fact that it was just on this newsbreak.com outlet, and that a Lee Thomas put this out on that news website. So you can take it with a grain of salt as to whether or not it's really happened, but for the sake of argument right now, let's just assume that this has happened. Here's what the post said regarding Ethan Crumbley. Quote, Ethan Crumbley, the teenager charged in the tragic shooting in Oxford, Michigan, has reportedly been sexually assaulted by another inmate in prison. The alleged perpetrator, John Nowakis, is said to have attacked Crumbley in his cell, leaving him with severe injuries, it says. Other prisoners reported Nowakis making Ethan hold his pocket that had been made inside out for the last month. Now, quick thing, that's prison. That's an old prison tactic dating back to, well, a very long time. In fact, it was first highlighted in the documentary Scared Straight, where prisoners were again scaring straight, so to speak, these teenagers, and they told a number of these teenagers to stick their hands out, and then the prisoners would pull their pockets inside out and exposed on the outside of their pants, and then make the youth hold on to them as if to say that they are basically their quote unquote bitch, or that they're their sexual partner, or they are their sexual slave, or they have to do whatever it is that they have to do. So that's where the pocket holding comes from. The description goes on here. It says, Nowakis had been introducing Ethan to other prisoners and forcing him to perform gruesome sexual acts on Nowakis and fellow prisoners. It says, according to sources, Crumbley was taken to the prison infirmary after the assault, where medical staff discovered that his anus was torn up and scarred from months of abuse. The young man is said to be in a state of shock and trauma following the incident. The news of Crumbley's assault has sparked outrage and concern among the public, with many questioning the safety and security of inmates in the prison system. Advocates for prison reform are calling for a thorough investigation into the incident and for measures to be put in place to prevent such attacks from happening in the future. It has come to light that John Nowakis has since been released from prison and is currently staying with relatives in the Flint area. He has previously been imprisoned from multiple charges of sexual abuse, child sexual abuse specifically, and is expected to register as a sex offender. As the case continues to unfold, it serves as a stark reminder of the dangers and vulnerabilities faced by individuals in the prison system. It is crucial that steps are taken to ensure that safety and well-being of all inmates, regardless of their crimes or backgrounds, unquote. Okay. Here's my 2 cents on this. First of all, Crumbley was a minor when he was convicted and imprisoned. No one has the foresight, ladies and gentlemen, to to look into the future and say to themselves, in particular as a lawbreaker or a future lawbreaker, to actually say to themselves the following. Ethan Crumbley's not going to say, okay, I'm going to kill these people because of all of the COVID tyranny and all of that mind-breaking nonsense and the school environment, and I've been trying to warn people that I want to hurt others because of the aggression that I feel and the neglect that I have felt and experienced and so on and so on. But I don't want to do it because I'm going to get raped when I'm in jail. And I can't imagine what that's like, so I need to be able to think that far ahead so that I understand that down the line in the future, I'm probably going to get raped in prison. So I'd better not do this thing because I don't want to get raped in prison. If you're asking a child, I should say, who was clearly possessed enough to want to kill, to think that far down the line regarding what potentially would happen to him in jail, again, assuming all of this is real, then I would say that you've lost your mind. Again, in my opinion, knowing that Ethan Crumbley took the lives of 4 people and wounded others, many others, along with, of course, all of the residual effects that come with that kind of a crime, Ethan Crumbley doesn't have this coming. His sentence was not be raped on a daily basis. I mean, that's not what the sentence was. Yes, I fully understand that people would say he was sentenced to prison for the rest of his life. Therefore, everything that goes on in prison, well, he has that coming then, because that comes with the territory, quote unquote. That's sort of the collateral damage that comes from being convicted of a crime and finding your way in prison. Again, I would say no to that, and that's my opinion. I don't think that people have that coming. They don't deserve that. Like, oh, that's what they get. On the other hand, when it comes to individuals who engage in sexual crime, again, I know that tips individuals in a different direction. There are individuals who applaud murderers for killing sexual predators who are in prison. And I've even shown those videos on the war videos before and on my Gab page to show people, hey, look, this happens. This is one of the things that happens. There are individuals in prison who tolerate sexual abuse. There are individuals in prison who engage in it, get away with it. And then there are individuals in prison who don't tolerate it and they don't like it. And some of these individuals have killed other people, and some of these individuals are serving a life sentence, and they don't care if they kill a sexual predator, because again, the sexual predator may voice their opinions on what they've done in the past and what they plan on doing in the future once they get out, and they know that they're going to get out, and it's only a matter of time. So the individuals who, are serving a life sentence for murder or some other crime, they have no problem taking the life of a sexual predator because they don't want an innocent individual in the future to be abused and have their life ruined. Part of me gets that. But the open sexual abuse of a person in prison on a constant basis and being passed around like a bar of soap, ladies and gentlemen, I don't agree with that at all. And I want to read some of these comments that were below this post because there were 550 of them. Here was the top comment. This is the one that had the most upvotes, and it had 34 replies. It says, quote, people, he's just a kid that had a terrible upbringing by negligent parents, quote unquote, they said, and that he never had a chance in life. Yes, what he did was horrific, but I would never want this to happen to anyone, especially a kid. And then there's a comment below it that says, those kids he got were bullies and deserved it. I think that individual is referring to the individuals, again, who he shot in the Oxford High School. Either way, the next comment goes down and it says, sexually assaulted for months, They were already waiting for him to arrive. I'm sure that the guards of the facility were fully aware of what was taking place. Another one said, I agree. Horrible employees are generally the reason this happens all over America. They bring in drugs, cell phones, etc. Another person said, no one seems to care that the guy who assaulted him is a convicted child sex offender already and has been released from prison. Another person said, go back to Ohio. Buckeye's not allowed to respond till Michigan kicks your ass again. Now they're talking about football, and that's just pathetic and sad. Another one said, Jesus Christ, this kid did a terrible, unthinkable thing, but this is not right. I am so sick. He didn't even have a chance from his horrible parents and this horrible justice system. I'm sure that he will be dead before the end of the year. Seriously, F this world. And then they went on and on and on. And then there were other people that said, oh my God, I don't care what happens to him. He killed 4 people. He ruined endless people's lives. He didn't have to kill 4 people in his school. What the hell's the matter with all of you, and blah, blah, blah. That's not exactly the definition of an eye for an eye, and that's not a tooth for a tooth, and that's not justice. It just isn't. One heinous crime being punished with another heinous crime is not the definition of justice. It just isn't. It's disgusting. And it's the prison employees who are allowing that to happen. They, of course, are the much larger problem as well. Again, this is our entire judicial system. They're included in it. And yes, I understand that rape happens in prison, and I think everybody knows that. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't make it right. It does, unfortunately, make it a very heinous consequence of what happens when individuals can go to prison, among endless other things such as murder and everything else. But it still doesn't make it right. And again, somebody to use the word deserve, like he deserves that and he has that coming, and well, he should have known that that's what happens in prison, and he should have thought things through and not done what he did in the first place, and blah blah blah. You can't ask an individual to go back in time and to have the foresight to be able to say, okay, here's what's going to happen to me in the future if I engage in this crime. People who engage in heinous crimes usually don't think that far ahead. They usually don't. And they're usually possessed. There's something else going on with them, which causes them to do the things that they do at random, which, of course, he did. Now, yeah, he planned it out a little bit in advance, but at the exact same time, it was certainly the environment and his circumstances that drove him to that point. I just think it would be unfortunate for anybody who was directly involved in that to be saying to themselves right now, after hearing something like this, well, he deserves it, and that's what he gets, and, good for him, and blah, 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 and he should have thought about this before. I mean, all of that's just beyond gross as far as I'm concerned, so that's my 2 cents on it. I'll leave it at that. Everybody regarding that whole case has been tricked and manipulated anyway. They have no idea which way is up, as much as they might think they have it all figured out. So anyway, with all that aside, let me move on to this too. Rather disturbing also, on a different wavelength, of course, certainly not the same as the previous, but this is out of Minnesota. Advocate.com specifically is the website. It is titled, "It's Now Illegal for Minnesota Libraries to ban LGBTQ plus books under this new law." And it says the following: Minnesota has banned book bans, essentially, making it illegal for libraries to remove titles based on ideology. Now, this is a double-edged sword. And there's a flip side to the coin, rather. Depends on how you look at it. Yes, this now means, of course, that censorship has no place in our libraries, according to their governor, Tim Walz. As he said in a tweet, quote, "As a former teacher, I'm clear we need to remember our history, not erase it. Today I signed a bill into law putting an end to book bans based on ideology in Minnesota." Depends on how you look at it. Again, as I said on Gab, individuals would do well to put copies of the Bible and even Mein Kampf in their libraries now and essentially sue these schools for attempting to remove them. Because if you can't remove books now, based on ideology, and we know again that they probably want to fill these libraries with pornographic books and more pornographic books than what they already have, then why not give them a taste of their own medicine? Why not put in the Jewish Lie Holocaust book series, which can be purchased over there at armreg.co.uk? Why not take that giant book series and all of those book volumes and just bring it on over there? Inconvenient History. There's numerous volumes of a book titled Inconvenient History. There's the, what else here? The Holocaust Encyclopedia. There you go. Why not buy a copy of that and work its way into these school libraries? And then again, if the school libraries attempt to remove them, well, sue them. Sue them using their own law against them. Again, they're using this for their purposes, which is to further perverse and degenerate the entire environment and the youth within and brainwash them more so than they already are. So why not just throw it right back at them? This is a perfect example of how you fight fire with fire. Or, of course, you could use that law as a motivator to home learn your children and have them home learn on their own and home teach them and get them out of that environment and get them right back into the home learning where they can have the freedom to read whatever they want without being subjected to all the perverse books and 1,000 other things. This article simply states that Governor Tim Walz, Democrat, signed H.F. 3782 into law last week, which prevents libraries from removing books, quote, based solely on the viewpoints, content, message, idea, or opinion conveyed. Now, as you've heard me say before here, the catch with all of this is that it's the library associations that make the choices on what books show up in the first place. So if you were to approach the library associations and say, I want Mein Kampf and the Bible and all of these other encyclopedic books telling the truth about real history to be in your libraries, they of course would say no. And you know why they would say no, as I've been over on the show. The head of the American Library Association is a Jewish lesbian. So what could possibly go wrong? In fact, the article says right here, instead, it says content curation will be managed by, quote, a licensed library media specialist, an individual with a master's degree in library sciences or library and information sciences, or a professional librarian or person with extensive library collection management experience, unquote. It doesn't say a knowledgeable person on the world we live in. No. It has to do with anybody who's been in the system for any length of time, who's far enough brainwashed to our specification so that we know that they're putting in only what we want them to put in and are still excluding anything that we don't want in there. In particular, if even they deem it as being inappropriate in some way. The double standard of laws like this is overwhelming, but that's their game. That's the game they play. That's what they do. So again, if you're interested in real history and real books on real history, there's always two publication outlets that I recommend. There's moneytreepublishing.com and there's armreg.co.uk. Check those out if you're interested, and you'll get all the real history you can possibly handle. Okay, moving on. There was a blog post here, and this is a nice little segue into the medical news for the day. But there was a blog post here over on powerlineblog.com, which I wanted to read, and I found this fascinating. And it's frankly not unusual, as one might expect, but it was titled, DEI Can Get You Killed. And this was written and published rather on May 23rd by a John Hinderaker. And I wanted to read this. It's short, but it's very poignant and proves numerous points. It says the following, again titled, DEI Can Get You Killed. It says, quote, insiders at UCLA's medical school apparently have shared information with the Free Beacon that shows the destructive impact of racism DEI on medical schools. The story by Aaron Siberarium, if I'm saying that right, begins with an anecdote. It says, quote, When it came time for the admissions committee to consider one such student in November of 2021, a black applicant with grades and test scores far below the UCLA average, some members of the committee felt that this particular candidate, based on the available evidence, was not the best fit for the top-tier medical school, according to two people present for the committee's meeting. Their reservations were not well received. When an admissions officer voiced concern about the candidate, the two people said the Dean of Admissions, Jennifer Lucero, exploded in anger. Quote, "Did you not know African American women are dying at a higher rate than everybody else?" Unquote. Lucero asked the admissions officer. These people said. The candidate's scores shouldn't matter, she continued, because, quote, "we need people like this in the medical school," unquote. Racism in public school admissions was illegal in California, even before the Supreme Court's Harvard decision last year. But when have liberals ever felt obligated to follow the law? The Beacon reports that some admissions officers, or officials rather, were unsettled by the outburst by Lucero. Quote, "We are not consistent in the way that we apply the metrics to these applicants," unquote, the official wrote in an email obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. Quote, "This is troubling," unquote. They went on and said, quote, "I wondered," the official added, "if this applicant had been a white male, or an Asian female for that matter, whether we would have had that much discussion," unquote. I assume that question is strictly rhetorical. But what has been the effect of lowering admission standards for favored categories of applicants? It says faculty members with firsthand knowledge of the admissions process say it has prioritized diversity over merit, resulting in progressively less qualified classes that are now struggling to succeed. Race-based admissions have turned UCLA into a, quote, "failed medical school," unquote, said one former member of the admissions staff. Quote, "We want racial diversity so badly, we're willing to cut corners to get it," unquote. It says, for example, quote, "I have students on their rotation who don't know anything," unquote. A member of the admissions committee told the Free Beacon, quote, "People get in and they struggle," unquote. How badly do they struggle, the article said. It says here in italics, within the 3 years of Lucero's hiring in 2020, UCLA dropped from 6th to 18th place in U.S. News & World Report's ranking for medical research, and in some of the cohorts she admitted, more than 50% of students failed standardized tests on emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics. And those presumably are now, or soon will be, treating patients. It says those tests, known as shelf exams, which are typically taken at the end of each clinical rotation, measure basic medical knowledge and play a pivotal role in residency application, though only 5% of students fail each test nationally. The rates are much higher at UCLA, having increased tenfold in some subjects since 2020, according to internal data obtained by the Free Beacon. It says contemplate that failure rates increasing by an order of magnitude due to DEI. No doubt that has to do in part with a, quote, "steep drop in the number of Asian matriculants," unquote. What does that mean for future patients? One professor said that a student in the operating room could not identify a major artery when asked, then berated the professor for putting her on the spot. Another said that students at the end of their clinical rotations don't know basic lab tests and in some cases are unable to present patients. It says, quote, "I don't know how some of these students are going to be junior doctors." The professor said, quote, "Faculty are seeing a shocking decline in knowledge of medical students," unquote. It goes on, it says, "There's no doubt that the shocking decline, quote unquote, in competence of medical students is caused by DEI. There's a couple of quotes here. It says, quote, "All the normal criteria for getting into medical school only apply to people of certain races," an admissions officer said. For other people, those criteria are completely disregarded. It says, led by Lucero, who also serves as the vice chair for equity, diversity, and inclusion of UCLA's anesthesiology department. Oh my God. And that's great. Sorry. It says the admissions committee routinely gives Black and Latino applicants a pass for subpar metrics. 4 people who served on it said while whites and Asians need near perfect scores to even be considered. It says the bar for underrepresented minorities is, quote, as low as you could possibly imagine, unquote. One committee member told the Free Beacon, quote, it completely disregards grades and achievements, unquote. It wraps up and it says this outrageous story is being replicated across most of our educational institutions and most of our economy. In all cases, race discrimination produces worse results, and in some cases, like medical school admissions, it can get you killed, unquote. No kidding. No kidding. In particular, when the woman in charge of their DEI program, which is complete and utter pretend, is also the head of their anesthesiology department. And she's responsible for dishing out anesthesia to individuals who need it before a surgery of some kind. Good Lord. I mean, think of that metric system. They're white, give them more. Or they're black, give them more anesthesia because, they're unequal and the amount of anesthesia they receive is unequitable and we need to give them more so that they feel better and then they end up getting killed. It's just nuts. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. These people are destroying their own lines of work, as I've said numerous times before, and they have no idea why. They have no idea why they're getting cut loose. They have no idea why they're failing, why they're not getting hired in particular places. It's because they're always trying to cram a square peg into a round hole on a constant basis, and that's how their entire brain works. I mean, that's just how they operate. It's amazing. Okay, now speaking of that, let me revisit the audio that you heard in the last episode regarding the Army veteran, who I believe may still work for the Army, and God knows why, who was jabbed in that 16 to 17 minute clip that I played at the end of the last episode. Again, what an absolute nightmare of a story regarding her experience having taken 2 Pfizer jabs. Absolute nightmare. I'm shocked she's even alive. But again, clearly, she's living through an absolute hell on Earth. With that said, of course, at the end, when she's asked whether or not she'll get more shots, that's when you can see the real brainwashing kick in. In fact, she indicated it far earlier when she's referring to COVID as being a real thing, and viruses being a real thing, and the pandemic being a real thing. Of course, none of those are real. They're all fake. But when asked if she wanted more jabs in the future, or if she would ever take more vaccines, she said, well, sure, just not the mRNA ones. She said she'd take the tetanus shot, she would take the flu shot, she would take this shot or that shot if it was on the schedule and it was what she needed to take. You could hear the air suck its way out of that jab testimony bus. I mean, you could just hear it leave, all the air just gone. And the unfortunate part, as one might expect, is that, again, she believes that all of these things are real. She believes that virology is real, that viruses exist, that COVID is a thing, and that there was a pandemic, and that, maybe the shots do work, and, but maybe they don't for some and whatever else. She's not awake. Even after everything that's happened to her, she's still not awake on the business of vaccine in general, and the medical system in general as being the number one killer in the world. So my hope is, and it is a hope of mine, that at the end of their testimonies, someone on that jab bus looks at them and says, here's some literature, you need to read this. Here's a documentary, you need to watch this. Viruses aren't real. There was no COVID. There is no pandemic, never has been. And that all of these things that you're experiencing, including tetanus, flu, whatever, that those shots are poison for something that also does not exist. There's no such thing as tetanus, no such thing as the flu. There is only poison to a company a fairy tale. And then they become a customer. And they remain a customer of the pharmaceutical industry until they're dead. And that's how the pharmaceutical industry continues to exist. Oh, you have symptoms? Oh, well then we're going to make up a name associated with these symptoms. We'll call it a condition, or we'll diagnose you, quote unquote, with a particular illness. So we think, and so you'll believe blindly. And then you'll take whatever medicine we prescribe, because we'll say that this is the thing that ails you, and this is the thing that will cure the thing that ails you. She's not awake. It was very sad listening to that. Again, just not a clue in the world as to what's going on. But at least she picked up on the fact that the mRNA shots are bad. Again, joke's on her, unfortunately. The mRNA now, and that nanotech, self-assembling nanotechnology poison, along with the other poison that's in the shots, is in all shots now. It's in all of them. This has been tested. It's been seen under flu shots. It's been seen in insulin shots. It's been seen in dental anesthetic. Why wouldn't it be in every other conceivable shot that a person can possibly imagine? It has to be. There's also this too, speaking of sort of a ubiquitous nature of this poison. Again, not new, but a nice little reminder here, a recent reminder from the burningplatform.com, titled, "Researchers Call for Urgent Action to Address Mass Contamination of Blood Supply." Isn't that interesting? Now, I remember a bald guy once going to a school board meeting a number of years ago and mentioning this very thing. Only, of course, to be relentlessly attacked online for being a fearmonger and a conspiracy theorist. Well, wouldn't you know it? The chickens are coming home to roost yet again. Yep. When you put poison in your body that damages your DNA tells your body to make blood. And when it contaminates blood, and your DNA is contaminated and broken, and they don't do the things that they're supposed to do anymore, of course your blood's going to be toxic. This right here, ladies and gentlemen, too, is another example of something that we have to see in the future, and when we see this, we will know that we are winning in a very large way. Within this article, they openly state the following. I'm just going to read the conclusion first, and then I'll get into just a couple more specifics here. I also have a piece of audio I want to play, also from the Children's Health Defense jab bus, of a woman who, again, took 2 Moderna shots and is suffering greatly from them, unfortunately. But, as we know, this comes with the territory. But there's also this. Again, this was just the conclusion. It says, in conclusion, the authors point out that if we continue using mRNA LPN-based platforms to replace conventional vaccines or create new ones, then the risks to our blood and bone marrow supply will be augmented further. Okay, the thing that we need to see in the future is a removal of all vaccination, because all vaccination is based on a fairy tale. All of it. Until, and again, this has been proven, but until the entire industry is shut down because the illegality, criminality, and death from vaccination is presented to them, and then it's criminalized, okay, so that the admission of vaccination is actually criminalized. Until that happens, then we're just kicking the can down the road here. Because all of the ailments that by and large exist, certainly among children and adults these days, as it's been for centuries now, certainly based on inoculation, that it is inoculation itself that is causing all of these problems. So regarding blood specifically, here was the story at a glance. It says, Japanese researchers warn of the risks of using blood from mRNA COVID vaccine recipients, highlighting potential deadly effects and the need for urgent action to secure the global blood supply. Blood contaminated with prion-like structures from the spike protein raise the risk of inducing fatal neurodegenerative diseases in recipients. It says the potential transmission of harmful proteins through exosomes, shedding, quote unquote, which is electromagnetism, and the risk of autoimmune diseases due to the vaccine's mechanisms and components like lipid nanoparticles and other major concerns. It says proposals for managing blood collection include rigorous donor interviews, deferral periods, and a suite of tests to ensure the safety of blood products. It then says the researchers advocate for comprehensive testing of both jabbed and unjabbed individuals to assess the safety of blood products and suggest discarding blood products contaminated with spike proteins or modified mRNA until effective removal methods have been developed. No, it's just, you can't filter the blood and get rid of this kind of a thing. I don't think you can. I understand that you can clean blood, but of this, I don't think that exists yet. Let's see. And the final point was this. They call for suspending all gene-based vaccines, as I said earlier, and conducting a rigorous harm-benefit assessment in light of the serious health injuries reported. They also urge countries and organizations to take concrete steps to address and mitigate the already identified risks. I'll end it there, but the point is that until we start to see all vaccination removed and all vaccination not used by individuals, then we're kicking the can down the road, and doctors and hospitals are going to continue to be, quote unquote, baffled as to why people aren't taking them. This again proves that we have to be our own medical doctors. We have to be our own nurses. We are the ones who have to look up the real information on how to take care of ourselves, and, as luck would have it, thank God for it, the solution is far simpler than what people can possibly imagine. That's one of the reasons why they make medical school and the medical profession sound so complicated. It's because the whole thing is a flippin' lie. All of it's a lie. When you tell the truth, ladies and gentlemen, as old Judge Judy likes to say, you don't need a good memory. Real health is very easy to remember. How to take care of yourself is very easy to remember. What to avoid that is harmful is very easy to remember. And the nefarious fairy tale story lie that's fed to everybody is far easier to remember and know permanently for the rest of your life once you are awake and you can see that, in fact, that inoculation was created to perpetuate the virology lie. Of course, if you say that at the medical school of UCLA, you will be kicked out in the blink of an eye, and you will be quickly replaced with one of their DEI selections who can probably hardly read, let alone do a basic math problem. But that right there is the system that has to be criminalized. These lies and this fairy tale and the actions that follow have to be criminalized. When they are, then we will know that the tide is turning. I mean, the tide is already turning, of course. People are waking up, they're depending on themselves, one another, they're not going to the doctor's offices, etc., etc. But even so, endless people who are still, of course, in the profession of medicine, so to speak, and health care, quote unquote, when really it's just sick care. They have no idea what they're doing and continuing to falsely believe. So I'm going to end with this audio again. This is from the Jab Bus. This was from back in April of this year, 2024. This is 8 minutes long. This is sad as well. This is an individual who took 2 Moderna shots, and it's beyond evident that their respiratory system and circulatory system and cardiovascular system have been permanently damaged. So give this a listen, and I'll jump in on the other side.
My name's Omkari.
Okay, hopefully everybody can hear because of her condition, she can't speak very loudly.
I can speak loudly, but it uses a lot of energy.
Yeah. Okay, so you had 2 of these shots. Tell us why you took them in the first place.
Well, like a lot of people, we were believing the narrative that we were supposed to help out our fellow citizens and be protected. And I kind of believe what they are saying about the spike protein or whatever that's supposed to help with I don't know why I believed that, but I didn't know any better.
What were you doing work-wise? Did they make you take the shot as well?
Oh, yeah. We were required by our employers to have the vaccines, otherwise we'd lose our jobs.
All right, so you went in and took your first vaccine or shot or whatever you want to call this thing. And what happened after the first one?
I didn't feel any effects. I got it done, and they had us wait for like 15 minutes just to see if there was any kind of side effects, like fainting or whatever. And I felt fine and just went on my day as usual.
Okay, so then you went back and had another one. And what happened?
So after the second one, I immediately went on a trip to Alaska and had a great time. But I did notice like a month later, I had this horrible, lots of period blood coming out. And I had a lot of massive blood clots coming out of my period too. And it was so huge and so much blood came out that I haven't even had a period since.
It's awful.
Yeah.
Frightening.
Yes.
Okay, so then what happened?
Well, that was in 2021. And then for my job, we got frequent tests in our nose. We had to do self-tests where, you swab yourself and then you do it's like a home test kind. But we kind of had to do that like maybe once every 3 days and to make sure that no one had COVID. And as soon as you got COVID, then you were taken off the job. And I did get COVID. I mean, I did test positive for COVID in, I think, the end of 2021. So, what else?
So the condition that you're in now, you're in a lot of pain.
Yes.
And I can see you're struggling.
I am, yeah.
How did you get to that point, the point you're at now?
So it all started when I started getting vertigo in the middle of December of last year in 2023. And I just thought, great, I've got vertigo. Maybe I had it before, but it was due to an ear infection. But this time it wasn't. And I started going to a chiropractor, and my first adjustment caused me to start vomiting a lot. And I vomited so much that I ended up getting acid reflux as well. And one time I thought there was blood that came up, so I went to the ER that day. That was in January of this year of 2024. And all they did was just pump me full of drugs and sedatives, and I ended up just sleeping the next day for 24 hours. So I just thought, okay, fine. I'll try to recover. And I was seeing a chiropractor at the time who gave me the estimate that I'll get better by the 24th of February. And then I thought I was going to get better so much that I started putting in for more work. And the first day that I tried to get back to work on the 26th of February, I started dropping my tools. So I got numbness and tingling in my hands. And it just got worse and worse. All of a sudden, the numbness shot up my arms and then down my whole entire torso. And now I don't have control of my bowels either.
You can't work.
I haven't been able to work all year. This year so far.
And who's helping you?
I'm getting help by my mom. She had to come fly in from California just to help me out with my condition. I ended up in the ER again in March 13th.
It's from the vaccines. Before you took the Modernas or the Pfizers, which ones were they again?
2 Modernas.
2 Modernas. Before you took Moderna, you were fine.
Yeah, I was fine. Yeah, I was fine until the middle of December last year. Yeah.
Do you feel this condition is getting worse?
It feels like it. I'd like to think that I'm recovering, but it's kind of hard to feel like you're recovering when my symptoms seem to be worse. I'm getting spasms and they used to go away really quickly, but like within a minute, and now they're for longer, prolonged time and more frequent. And I've lost the use of my hands.
Have you reported this as a vaccine injury? Is it reported?
I have not, but my husband looked it up because I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. He looked it up under VAERS, and there's like 593 other reported cases. So I'm not reported, but they should probably have a lot higher number, actually, I guess.
Will you ever have another vaccination again?
I don't ever want to have another vaccination again. Nothing. One of the treatments that the neurologist offered, was to get a meningitis vaccine in order to go on their immunosuppressive therapies, because this transverse myelitis, according to them at the hospital, is an autoimmune disorder where my own blood cells are attacking my spinal cord and brain.
And they're saying that you should have a meningitis vaccine. You can't make this up.
I'm not making this up.
No, I know you're not. I said you can't. It's just ridiculous.
Well, they suggested that as one of the 3 treatments possible, but all 3 treatments had really adverse side effects. And the one that he wanted me to do required a meningitis vaccine first.
You did not take it?
No, I had an appointment, but with the pharmacist, so that he could talk me into taking it, but I canceled the appointment.
Wise move.
I hope so.
Oh my goodness, you poor thing. I hope there's someone listening that may be able to help you. You're here in Seattle, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I can see you're in so much pain. Thank you for telling us we're coming to the bus to do that. Is there anything else you want to say?
Had I known, I would not have taken those Moderna shots. I would have not taken this experimental gene therapy bullshit stuff.
Okay, very quickly. Again, this is my hope with this bus, is that the jab bus that's going around the nation and talking to volunteers who have been jab injured or know people who have been, or whistleblowers and XYZ, that they're not just letting these people get off the bus without giving them potential solutions to their problems here, because they exist. She should be taking ivermectin and seeing what the ivermectin does for her. She has multi-system organ failure, or multi-system, that's what I would categorize it as. Again, I'm not a medical doctor, but I would say she has multi-system organ failure to some extent. Potential pre-sepsis, certainly. She needs to be taking bromelain for her digestive organs. She needs to be taking nattokinase to try to release some of the inflammation from the nanotech that's clearly attacking her brain and spinal cord. I mean, there are things that she can take that are over the counter that are not that expensive that may have some relief. I just find it remarkably shocking that these individuals would get on these buses and then just walk away as if to say, well, good luck, take care, we'll pray for you and we hope the best. I mean, give them a handout. Give them websites to go to purchase these things, because these things exist. Again, they're all over my website under the medical documents tab. Detox baths. There's a number of different things that people can do to try on their own that are not prescription medicine. And you heard her example. I mean, they gave her a bunch of prescription meds. She went home and she slept for days. That's not going to cure anything, and that's certainly not going to treat anything effectively. So it's beyond terrible. But this is happening all over the place. All over the place. But again, I could stretch back and give you endless examples, but just pay attention to the people, again, continuously not talking about this. This is the ever-present albatross that just exists over our entire society. And as people are watching things get more expensive, and they're watching endless people get sick and endless people die, and people are just shrugging their shoulders and going, well, I don't know why that is. This is the reason. This is the reason right here. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and I'll catch you on Friday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.